One of the things that dropped in on my practice earlier, my meditation, was regarding terrorism. And you know, the reality is it's again, like we keep going back to, it's always a projection. Those who are professing, okay, we're going to stick to the prophecy, right? The false prophets that prophesize, they profess such and such to be true against others is about them too. It is a deliberate, it's what a narcissist does, gaslights. It says, you're this. And all they're doing is saying, I am this. But you have to see it. You have to recognize it and be able to acknowledge, look them in the eye and say, I see you. You're calling me this because that's you. That's your truth. Because that's all you know. And so you need me to believe, this is the BS belief systems. You need me to believe it to be true for me, for you to validate you too. It's a way of actually, you know, misery loves company. But you know what? Misery is lonely. That's why it wants company. So it's, how do we flip this around to bring them into our realm instead of allowing them to either reject or, you know, like the this or the that. I mean, we don't want to go along to get along. But see, this is the irony. Even on our side, we're saying we're right. It's the belief in, you know, the BS, the why people go to war is the imposition. I want to impose myself upon you. You have to think like I think. You have to believe what I believe. I want you to do what I say to do. So again, that's why people go to war. They want people to go along with them, to validate and support them. They don't want to be alone. And they're lonely at the top. And so because they don't know how to be healthy in relationship, they only know to manipulate and influence the way they have been doing. That's all they know. So they want us to be like them, to validate their own behavior, and they don't know anything else. You know, there's the old saying, instead of, you want to pull them into your peace, rather than you know, dropping to their level of discomfort and dis-ease and conflict and misery. So if they're miserable, if they're so out of alignment, how do we convince them to go along and get along with us, as opposed to allowing them to cause all this unrest within us? Because even on the same token, we can sit there and we can say, they're horrible, they're bad people, walk away, do your own thing. I mean, you can choose to completely disengage, doesn't get rid of it. It does reduce its efficacy. It does, it removes your power from them, from their hands. You reclaim yourself. They lose their steam, self-esteem, and their actual motivational steam. And it's like they need our power to keep fueled in that energy. But the more we remove that energy that they have access to, how about that actually creates the peace for them too? Not everybody's going to see it that way, of course. It's just a different perspective. But, you know, like the whole dark crystal theory, it's, you know, the Skeksis and the who, I don't know how to pronounce that, or who. It's like they need to come together to be one because they were separated from the start. Like there was an explosion of the crystal, and then they got divided and of course became two instead of one. And they were at conflict, at in balance, not at peace with themselves. Because again, it's going to go back to the relationship comment about how if someone doesn't love themselves, how do you think they're going to handle relationship with others? You know, in the beginning, it's easy to kind of mask it and not show that you don't care about yourself by pouring into others. But then you become resentful if you haven't already captured and understood how to be loving towards yourself. You can claim to be loving toward everyone else, But if you can't love yourself, you're not going to be able to love others too in a full, authentic way. The truth will always reveal itself. That's why it's easier for people to not deceive, but give someone the impression they're a great person in the beginning, but eventually they will shine through, whether they are true or they're denying themselves. So the relationship thing around, like, if you cannot love yourself, it will come out in relationship, always. It always reveals, because the mirroring effect. And when two people come together, if the two people don't love themselves first, that relationship will implode. There will be resentment regarding the fact that the one person who doesn't love themselves will resent the other person for even having any modicum of love for themselves. That's where narcissism really truly comes from, is the fact that they don't love themselves. And so there's that whole disguise, putting on the mask, acting like you're somebody you're not. It's like they can't authentically be themselves because they're afraid of being found out. Even in the case of what people would call evil, that's not even being themselves. That's a cover-up. That's a trauma response. I have to appear to be more powerful than I am because I don't think I'm powerful. I don't believe in myself. I don't like myself. So I have to put on this disguise to put fear in you so you won't get close enough to see through to the true person underneath this, like the man behind the curtain. I mean, ultimately, we can say, oh, those people are horrible. But at the root of everything that's horror or terror exists fear and pain. Those who inflict it have had it inflicted upon them. The bully learned to bully because it was bullied. So, yeah, wow. We can look at this whole situation with curiosity, the eyes of a child wondering, I see you. Like, children see the authenticity. That's why I say when I was younger, I feel like I always had this connection to source, and even my naivete as a child could still see the good in everyone. And even up until, and I still do, but it wasn't until, this past few years that I realized, holy crap, the people pleaser in me, but also that naivete that I will never let go of, because that is the truth of who we are, is to see through what is being presented to the core of what is. That there's love, there's potential, infinite possibilities within each and every one of us. That even though they may be giving the appearance of one thing, there is something else going on below the surface for each and every one of us. So even when I was a child, it was like, I can see you, but I didn't know I had to discern the veil. I didn't understand that. That was the hardest thing for me to learn all my life, was, wait a minute, if I can see that in you, why aren't you doing that? Why aren't you being that? Like, that was my true, pure inner child all of this time. And even sometimes still now, where I'm like, oh, I'm sad. I'm sad because I see where you're at, but I see your potential. I see your truth. I see the being within you. I see that spark of your soul. Namaste. The light in me sees the light in you. But see, the part they don't talk about, again, with the duplicity, the languaging and the wisdom of wholeness, the gnosis, is that I see the dark in you, and I honor and love that too. We always talk about the light, but what about the dark? Because all this time, the one thing I do know to be true is it has always been about the merging of the dark and the light, which is why I bring up the dark crystal, because that is the perfect example of what we are experiencing in the simplest form in a movie. You can look at all the other stuff, like the Minority Report and the technology stuff and all the, all those other distractions, but the reality is, at its simplest core, is we got divided along the way. It doesn't even matter why. Doesn't matter why. But this is the distraction, is the need to know, the FOMO, the fear of missing out. And at its core, even the entities we want to reject are lonely. They're the ones in despair. Everything they're trying to push us into, project upon us, is to validate and to justify their behavior, why they're the way they are. They were taught to be that way. Again, I go back to the scripts. They're all prescribed. We were trained and taught, prescribed one doctrine, and they were trained and prescribed a different doctrine based upon the split in humanity. The Cain, the Abel, the cannibal. I mean, really think about that. That's freaking sick, crazy shit. Breaking down the Cain, you know, like raising Cain, raising hell, Cain and Abel. The Cain stoic, I think of the Cain that's supportive, that holds you in place. The Abel, the ability, the doer, you know, one holds the structure and the other one actually is, it's like the divine masculine and the feminine, even though those sound like two masculine roles. But the feminine is all about the wild, the chaos, the crazy, the destruction, but also the creation. Whereas the masculine is the container, the structure of like support, stoicism, the ability to stay calm even in the chaos of the feminine. At what point are we going to come together and recognize that this is really, really going to come, this is going to turn out differently than people realize? Because you got to get angry. This is the scales of consciousness. Because anger shows you care. You have you have stock in the game. You got a stake in this whole big game of life, and you feel something is being threatened. Whatever that is. It doesn't have to be explained or validated or justified. That's just, there's a reason, there's a story, right? Let's go back. There's a story about everything. You can say something for everything. So many of us are actually in survival mode rather than thrival mode. So that when you're in survival mode, you can't recognize where you're being drained because you're trying to refill your cup as it's pouring out. It is literally the sinking ship with you with a cup trying to pour it out to where you don't even realize you're right next to a stepping off point where you could get out of that boat, that you don't even have to be in it. But we're not given these options to recognize. We're not taught how to rationalize, how to recalibrate, how to reclaim our power, what our power even is. In fact, I mean, the whole sacrifice, raise us like martyrs so that we are designed and thinking it's our nature to sacrifice ourselves for anything when it's not, because there is also self-preservation involved in that too, being in this human flesh suit. That the system has indoctrinated us on this script to follow the leader. You know, Jesus died on the cross for your sins, the martyr game, you know, so you should feel guilty and prove yourself constantly and seek validation and approval, you know, the fear of rejection, the fear of ostracization from the community, from the society, from social media these days. And you don't even realize that you've been set up to sacrifice. Sacrifice. Great song, by the way. You know, it really is. It's about peeling back the layers of recognizing that, you know, to make sacred, sacrifice. There's duplicity in that too. You do not have to give up your blood, sweat, and tears, as my last video voice audio is about. It's these rituals, you know, the rites, the relics, the rituals, the offerings, the sacrifice. I give of myself in such a way that it takes from you. Now, to make sacred, true sacrifice is not to give up something that's going to leave you depleted. True sacrifice is to make sacred. That when I give to you, I automatically receive and am filled up too. That it is receptivity. This is the imbalance in the life that we see around us, is that we have not been conditioned for receptivity. We have been conditioned for constant giving to exhaustion, depletion, literally lushing, harvesting energy, so that by the time you're done, you're shriveled up and you got nothing left. And that's depicted in the Dark Crystal, when they basically suck it out of the 𝐕𝐤𝐺lings and the different creatures in that movie. That's exactly what you're witnessing. There's no giving back. There's no refilling your cup. You're just here to pour into ours. And so the whole system, when you look into the, what happened, what started back in 2001 when I came back from being stationed in Belgium and went up to DC, and it was the whole ritual of the towers falling. And I'm not even going to say it because you know what I'm talking about. It's like, just by that whole orchestration, a whole nation lost its rights to free movement for just a few. Like, you think that we're being protected from just a few bad people? No, we're being targeted by the few bad people to suffer at their hands, to place more fear in us through the whole process, again, what is PTSD? It's a repeated trauma. And so what do you think all this is? It's beat it into you, beat it out of you, so that you don't trust what it is that's true for you, in you, that you outsource, that you give over your sovereignty, your ability to discern. Just let someone else choose for you. Let someone else take care of you. Let someone else pick up the tab, even though technically you're really paying for it in more ways than one. It's not just money. It's definitely not just your movement and ability. Anytime you have to think about, if I'm going to get in trouble for this, if I have to pay for something to justify it, do I have to get permission? Like, that is not freedom. Freedom is, moving freely, doing whatever it is you desire without someone's hand ready to slap you or take something from you or to penalize you. Like, this is where we're at right now. It's like, ever since that occurrence, we went from being able to walk up to, go travel on the plane, and all these extra measures that are insane, literally insane. And at the same time, you're like, well, wait a minute here. When was the last time you heard of something that happened that justified any of that? And the fact that they take stupid things from you when you even go through, you can't have a bottle of water going through. Like, are you freaking kidding me? You're going to play this power trip over here and try to make me feel shitty about these little details? It's like, you got people so busy and caught up in the rules, they're not even questioning their existence or the fact that they're not even lawful, or that they don't even have to follow them. But if enough people said, you know what, this isn't worth it. But see, the problem is most people, just like the child, don't touch the hot stove, it encourages the child to touch the hot stove. It's a psychology of, tell them they won't have the ability to do something and they will all run to go do it. Tell them they cannot do something and they will immediately feel the need to do it. Now, this is a funny story. When I was back in the basic training back in 1993, okay, we're going back in the archives. Wow, 31 years ago? Wait, where are we at? 23. Okay, 30 years ago. 30 years and a half, because it was January of 1993. I was in basic training and down at Keesler, no, that's Biloxi, Lackland Air Force Base in Texas. I'm down there, and I don't know why they tell you this stuff. They tell you shouldn't have candy. Don't ask your parents to send you anything. What do you think they did? Everybody's like, hey, can you send me some M&Ms, some Reese's Pieces? Can you send me this? And then when you got a care package, as we call it, everybody was told, okay, you're not supposed to have that. So we're going to give you a period of time to go out and eat it. And they would let everyone share it together, like as if it was kind of like a punishing reward at the same time. You see how the training is. It's the Pavlov's dog type deal. Ring the bell. But in a way that makes you like go against authority and then you get punished in some cases, but you get rewarded in others. So it confuses the fuck out of you. So sure enough, I had my dad send me some candy and some things. And that's exactly what happened. Like, we all went out and we all just like, hey, let's share some stuff. You know, like, that's what we did. We weren't supposed to have it. They told us not to have it. But what do you think we did? We all asked for it and we got it. So this is the irony. And it's like what I was saying in the other video regarding how they get you to, you know, like the drug testing stuff. It's like, here I am giving of my bodily fluids so that I can prove that I didn't do anything to get in trouble for my job in order to maintain and sustain it, which is, it's really fucked up. It's like, wait a minute, why am I incriminating myself? Why am I voluntarily giving you something from me that can get me in trouble? Why would I do that? Because I didn't think anything of it, because the naivete that exists within me is that, oh, I don't have anything to worry about because I'm not doing anything wrong. But you never question the questioning of it to begin with, because you're so freely giving of yourself. That's the martyrdom. That is a sacrifice. The sacrifice they indoctrinate into us. They want us serving them up whatever they ask without question. When you're in your sovereignty, you're making things sacred. So therefore, when someone asks of you, you are discerning enough to go, you know what? You don't need that access to me. It's like this crazy neighbor that I had that, you know, we were out one night in the sky. There was this beautiful heat storm. So you could see the distance, off in the distance, there was the lightning, but no sound. But it was gorgeous. You know, when you get to see that, you just stop in awe. And this neighbor on a tricycle, 3-wheel bike, younger kid, it's in the dark, and he's driving by, and I'm just checking my mail. But I'm standing there, and he says something, and I said, oh, we're really lucky we have beautiful skies here. And he turns around, and he starts talking to me, and he's asking me questions, and he introduces himself. And then at one point, he goes, well, who lives with you? And I said, excuse me. That's none of your business. Do you really believe that's an appropriate question? That's invasive. That's quite intrusive. Oh, I'm sorry. I just figured you said we. I said, I was talking about the skies. I wasn't, inviting, basically. I didn't say it, but I wasn't inviting you into my life and my home. You know what I mean? Fast forward last week, and ironically, I'm in my kitchen with the light on, but I don't have my outside light on. See, I'm from the old school of, if I haven't left my front light on the porch, that means don't come a knocking, because that's not an invitation. If the light is on, that means I'm home, and maybe if a friend is stopping by who announces themselves, may be invited. But I don't like when people just randomly show up at your door. There's a reason I have no soliciting outside on my doorstep. Like, don't invite yourself up to my home. If I did not invite you, then you do not belong here. Like, especially because I don't want anybody soliciting. And so I see him drive by, and it's dark out, on a 3-wheeler, his tricycle. And I'm like, okay. But then he turns around and he goes by again. And then he turns around. And I'm like, okay, this is really creepy. And I'm very aware of my surroundings. And then he turns around, and apparently he must have parked in my driveway. And I started to walk off to the left of the kitchen because it looks straight out on my sidewalk. And I turn to check my laundry. And then I see in the corner of my eye that he's walking toward my front door. And I'm like, what the hell is this guy doing? Did he not get the message the other day when I said, it's intrusive. Like, there's a boundary here. Don't be an idiot. Don't be an asshole. He apparently came up to the door. And I'm in the other room because I was checking my laundry, because I realized I'm going to get out of the window and I'm going to check my laundry because I have to check it. And I pause for a moment in my mind and I think, okay, let's see what this guy's going to do. Is he going to knock on the door, or is he going to actually have the audacity to just stand there, assuming it's okay to just stare in my window? Because this is the creepy vibe that I got off this guy. And previously, when I had met him on the street, I smelled alcohol, and I don't drink, and I don't invite those spirits into my space. So I walk back into the kitchen, and he's just standing there staring in my fucking window, and I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? And I'm pissed. Even my friends don't show up at my door like that. But the outside light is not on, so that means you're not invited, dude. So I open up the door and I say, excuse me, can I help you? Is there something you need? And he's like, and he smells like alcohol again. And I'm like, what is, and I'm looking at him with like raised eyebrows, like, what the fuck? And he goes, oh, I was just checking, seeing how you're settling in and what you're working on, da 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 da. I'm like, okay, now he's fishing for shit. Because I said, I'm sorry, what are you talking about? I'm just settling in. Like, oh, well, the last time I saw you, oh, blah, blah. He's just mumbling, like, trying to make up shit. I'm like, I'm in the middle of something. I don't have time for this. And he started to say something as I was shutting the door. I reopened it. Oh, I'm sorry. I was just checking on you. I'm your neighbor up the street, and reminds me of his name and all that. I'm like, yeah, I remember. And I didn't have, in the moment, the response I would have given him had I been more ready for that. But in the future, if it happens again, I would say, excuse me, if you hadn't noticed, if the light is out, it is not an invitation to come up on my doorstep. You might want to consider when someone sets a boundary to listen, to pay attention, because this is intrusive and people dislike and distrust people who do not respect their boundaries. That pissed me off. Just a heads up. So I would go across the street the other day, and I mentioned this to my neighbor because she's always sitting out on the stoop, which I'm very grateful for. She had surgery on her hip. And I asked her, hey, you remember the other day when, because I know she was sitting on the porch. I said, I noticed you were out there. She goes, yeah. She goes, what the fuck? She's so funny. I said, yeah. I said, creepy as fuck, right? And she goes, yeah, it was really fucking creepy. She goes, I guess she said something to him, like, I don't think she wants, he started to walk around the one side or something. And she goes, I don't think that's appropriate. She's not, she said something. And I said, yeah, I didn't invite that shit. I don't know what the hell is wrong with people that turn around and think it's appropriate to just show up unannounced after I'd already set and established a boundary the first time I spoke to him. So this is the thing in the world. If you give someone an inch, they'll take a mile. And that's what's been going on with the governments and the systems over these past few years. People are just like out of survival, out of stress response, out of trauma response. Well, I'll just go along with it, and hopefully it just, it dies off, it falls off. Like, it's non-confrontational. Most people are non-confrontational because they don't want to lose whatever it is they think they're going to lose. And that's different for everybody, because everybody's got a stake in the game. What is your priority? What is it you're afraid you're going to lose? And when someone says, well, if you go along, we'll let you have your rights. It's like, that was the underlying story and message, but people weren't hearing the part where it said, you're giving me permission to live my life if I go along with your bullshit? Like, never questioning the fact that, why am I going along? I don't need to give someone permission, and they don't need to give me permission. Like, where? That's the Jedi mind trick. At what point are we going to remember that it's an overreach? It's an abuse of authority. Like, the reality is, I don't need permission to live my life. If these are people in positions that they're supposed to look after our best interests, why do I need permission from them? If anything, they should be asking me for permission for the actions they are taking or the claims they are making. That's the Jedi mind trick. That they trip you up by putting fear in you. This is across all time and space. This is how they get you. Trip you up by tricking you, putting you in a fear response, putting you in a triggered state, an altered state, because emotionality is irrationality. When you become emotional, you become irrational. You are out of your body.
You're not present. You're in the past, living out an experience that is not here. So you end up acting from a place of trauma, out of survival, unable to make an educated, a perfectly good, fully informed decision. You're under duress because they put you in stress. They have ultimately hijacked you. It is sorcery. This is the spell casting. All you have to do is be triggered by something and they got you. So to turn around and get you in an altered state like that, you're out of your mind, literally. That's actually the definition of insanity, and they know that. Why do you think that in the past there were all these psych wards? They could turn around and say you were mentally insane. Anything, they could make up all sorts of stories. Isn't that what they do? So they put these stories out there to put fear in you, and now you're in a survival mode of, oh my God, the sky is falling, henny penny, and you're believing it. You're never questioning the reality of the situation is they're trying to take something away from you. Anytime they try to put fear in you, they're trying to take something out of you and away from you. And that again goes back to the infiltration or the extortion. They will try to fill you in on the game submissively with subliminal messaging, or they will try to extort from you your soul, your being, your loose, your energy. That's the harvesting.
Yeah, so I'd say the message is interesting that most people didn't get is that you're trading this is how the eroding of our rights initially began, with the idea that you were going to lose your ability to live your life the way you want to, which you didn't have to begin with, by going along with some piddly little bullshit story that they created and you bought into, literally. They had the doctrine, you fell for it hook, line, and sinker. For their prescription, they prescribed it, you took it, and now you're stuck. Or they think you are. But if you're smart enough and you wake up, you can actually reclaim it. The only reason people did it was because they didn't even realize what they'd been given away to begin with. So it didn't seem like they were giving up anything. They just thought, oh, whatever, okay, yeah, I'll just go along with it. Because most people don't want to deal with that confrontation of, oh, it doesn't feel right. I don't like feeling uncomfortable. So I just, get through it real quick. It's like, it's cognitive dissonance. It's ignorance. It's not owning your truth. So a whole little circle all the way around. But back to the bottom line is that relationships and reclaiming our sovereignty and recognizing the simplicity of the dark and the light is one and the same and halves of the whole. But it really has been, what I essentially was talking about was basically, I was thinking about going in the airports, and this is what was going through my mind earlier regarding the idea that you have to go through all of this search and seizure and prove yourself safe. It's like, and then on top of it, it's like you got systems in place for you to basically, give away, like, I want it to be easier, so let me get the, like this entry system. So now you've really got a whole rap sheet on me, and having been in the military, it's like they just keep eroding our human rights because we give it to them voluntarily. We allow it because we go along with it, and we're not claiming it. We're just giving it. And it's so silly because what people don't realize is the fear that they are implying we should have is against some story, some orchestration of a single or a few little situations that really were minimal and isolated compared to, it's not the general consensus. See, when they flip the script, for the few, the many suffer, as opposed to, used to be the majority rules, right? Like for the majority, they would rule. They're playing the game. This is what happened. They flipped the script. From majority rules to for the few, the many will suffer. And they are the few. So when they say that they're protecting you from terrorists, they're trying to put the terrorist in you. They're trying to make you that. Why would they do that? To justify and validate when you uprise. Because all of that is taught. Everything over the years. How do you think they created all these nations that are angry, hostile, and then they call them terrorists? They weren't originally. They were just like us. It's a slow drip. The IV has been placed in generations for years. So what you do, just like they did in Europe, I mean, you've got areas where people were brought in, immigrated, not voluntarily, not like a normal migration, but the kind that somebody funds and supports and goes in to deliberately create the chaos because they make order out of chaos so that they can act like, oh, you know, we'll take care of you. But in the cases we've seen, they have not been taking care of the few, you know, taking care of the majority rules. They've actually been letting the few overrule. And so, like, what do you think's happening here in the U.S.? We got war-aged, able-bodied men from other nations, and definitely not from the south of this nation, entering our borders, entering our states, coming into our cities. They're being sponsored, not just by the people who sent them, but by our own government. They're given money, housing, far exceeding what any American even makes most of the time. And then they're basically they're being promised, you know, they're basically getting set up. We're all being set up, honestly. So when there is an uprising and people finally say, I've had a fucking enough, they'll be prepared to retaliate. And then they'll tell us exactly what I just described and explained. It is a slow drip, and it's deliberately designed to get people pissed off, angry enough to make bad decisions and choices. Aside from their calculation, they know that when we become emotional, we become irrational, and then they justify their behavior because they're playing on the emotions. That they know you'll trip up when you're irrational and emotional, because that's what happens. You cannot make a rational decision in a time when you are emotionally charged and triggered. That's when you make the worst decisions in your life, is when you are acting from a place of emotional irrationality, a place of trigger, trauma, stress response. All of that is connected, but they set us up all along. They created the chaos so they could use it to gain power and claim it to be order, to steal, rape, pillage, prosper in their minds. So that's just a picture of what I see that they've been doing. It's probably the simplified version. I mean, you can go into the details, but the details are irrelevant, and it's all irrelevant. If you can get past all the stories and just start, or, you know, come back to the, again, like the pendulum is swinging, you got to come back to the homeostasis, the balance. If you don't get back to the balance point, that you'll hit the tipping point. And it's up to us to not, and I mean the tipping point in their direction. We need to have the tipping point come back to our side so that we can reclaim and flip the script back to balance and neutral and harmony and all that stuff, and be in symphony with one another, with our tunes, striking each other's chords, unlocking each other's keys, frequencies. You know, we are the catalyst for change here. But we have to be in awareness of what's going on. First, for ourselves. Most people are not tapped and tuned into themselves. If you don't know what's going on, you don't know how to decode yourself, you will be taking off your rocker. You're so easy to trip up because you only see part of the whole. But when you can see it all and see it as whole and get the full picture, then you can be more calculated, and you're not coming from the sympathetic nervous system that is the fight or flight freeze response that basically, I love this, when you're in stress response, when you're triggered with trauma, emotional, irrational. That is the fight, flight, freeze, or fawn response. That is you going into survival. And that's where they get you. Because it's unhealed. It's not whole. You're not balanced. You're not in your body. You're out of your mind. It literally is a harvesting illusion, but it's also taking the spirit out of you. Sympathetic nervous system is only meant to be in times of true threat. Most people are living in perception of a threat based on a past trauma. So they can't discern, they haven't learned, they haven't recognized the true signs to tap into themselves, to feel. Because when you escape the body, the mind takes you out. Literally, figuratively, spiritually, and emotionally. The key is being grounded, rooted. I in the spiritual community during these past several years, I'm like, 2013, I had a download. And the download, while I was sitting in my meditation, I had just come back from working in Italy. I didn't know what was going to happen next, but I knew I needed to be back in my yoga studio. I'm sitting there on the floor. I remember I was by myself, at least in the moment. I was so deep in it. And the message that poured in was, be present here now in your body. This is why we're here. Now, I'm not a person who ever tries to escape my body. I've had a lot of pain. I don't like feeling pain. But again, like I said previously in my other videos, pain has been my biggest teacher. And I recognize that without the pain, how can you have the pleasure? Because they're the same receptors. But I don't try to escape my body. I want to be here. I love my body. I love sensations. I want to be tapped in and tuned in and turned on too. Because that's what the five senses are all about, whether you like it or not. So most people are trying to escape their bodies because they don't even want to be here because of their minds. So the body is at the behest of the mind and the creation and the constructs of the stories that it concocts because of the past that you think it thinks will repeat itself, which won't, unless you keep repeating the story in your head, and then that just proves you're a manifester, how good of a manifester you are. The message was, you're meant to be here now in this body. You're not meant to escape. That's not why we came here. We're here to feel it fully, feel it all. Not to run, not to hide, but to be here in the now. That the body is the biggest gift you could ever experience. And I mean, I looked around myself in the spiritual community and I saw so many people airy-fairy, out of their minds, out of their bodies. Like, I literally wanted to pull them down and tether them to the earth. And that's why I have been so passionate about what I do, because I see it all around me. Literally, people up in the ethers. I can see their body and the disconnect from the actual spirit that they're trying to eject. Wow. It's been an interesting ride, all I can say. But that was a beautiful message to receive. And I was like, I get that. I totally get that. But I got the message not so much for myself, but to recognize it around me, because in that moment, I realized a big part of my work is not only to activate the awareness in others, to activate the supreme power within you to reign in your life, but it's also to remind you why you're here, to feel it fully, to feel it all, that we are extrasensory beings, that we have five senses, that we take in all the data of this beautiful life. It's beautiful. And take that into ourselves to heighten us, to get the full experience, to not numb anything out. Because that's what heightens our intuition, the into me I see, the intimacy of self. Connecting the mind, the body, the spirit, and soul. The Holy Trinity is within you. That's what makes you whole, is when you reclaim it and you connect them. But when you're disconnected through this whole crazy system, That disconnect is what keeps us disconnected. When we reconnect within, we reconnect with one another. It's just all divinely orchestrated. It's just up to us to tune into it. And that, again, like I've said before, when you see something bad over there, remember to look over the other direction, because it's never far off. Everything in the world is perfect as it is. The energies are in fluctuation, constant state of ebb and flow. But that's how we grow. Because the movement of the energy evolves us. It's a catalyst for our alchemy. It aligns us to our destiny and our truth, our happiness, our joy. You know, like I said before, where there's poison, the antidote is always nearby. But see, now we need to be shifting our focus, cleansing our lenses, making sure that we're in awareness of it all, coming back to the full picture, seeing things as they are and not as we want them to be. That's where the suffering begins. It's also where it ends. When you own it and don't let it own you, and you accept it as it is, then you know what to do. Okay, that's a good, powerful one. I'll stop there. That's over half an hour. So, yeah. Thank you for listening to my TED Talk. I'm just here to support, uplift, inspire, and hopefully that empowers you to be the best version you are meant to be. Just remember one thing. It's not luck. It's alignment.